My daughter and I pulled off the performance of our lives that weekend. In the morning after the engagement party, my future son-in-law walked straight into the trap we had set for him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Saturday in late October, one of those gray afternoons we get in Ontario when the leaves are mostly gone and the cold has finally decided to stay. I had driven up to the Elmwood Golf and Country Club early because my daughter's fiancé had booked the private dining room for his bachelor dinner with his groomsmen the night before the big engagement celebration. My daughter Adele had asked me to drop off some decorations she had ordered, table centerpieces, a banner, that sort of thing, because she was still at the salon and couldn't make it herself. The club manager, a woman I'd known for years named Patrice, let me in through the side entrance. I was carrying 2 boxes, and she was pointing me toward the storage room just off the hallway that runs behind the private dining area. The hallway is narrow and the walls are old wood paneling, and sound travels through it the way sound travels through an old house. Quietly, clearly, without warning. That's when I heard them. I stopped walking. I couldn't help it. I heard my daughter's name. Adele has no idea, the voice said. It was Mitchell. I recognized his voice immediately. That particular self-satisfied tone he always had, like everything he said was the punchline to a joke only he understood. She thinks I'm crazy about her. She genuinely believes it. There was laughter. At least 2 other men. Come on, man, she's not that bad, another voice said. One of his friends. I didn't know which one. No, she's fine, Mitchell said. She's fine. But look, let's be real. Her father owns 3 commercial properties in Barrie and has a portfolio worth, conservatively, $2.5 million. And Adele is an only child. You do the math. More laughter. You're serious, someone said. I've never been more serious in my life. She's going to inherit everything. And once we're married, that money belongs to both of us. That's how it works in this province. Family property, matrimonial home, equalization payments. I've looked into it. I stood there in that hallway with 2 boxes in my arms and I felt something go cold in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter than anger. A kind of stillness that comes when you realize the world has just shown you exactly what it is. I set the boxes down slowly and quietly against the wall. What about her father? Someone asked. He seems like he'd be sharp. He'd figure it out. Mitchell laughed. Gerald? He's 63 years old and he thinks I hung the moon. I've been playing that man for 2 years. He's easy. Old guys like him, they just want to believe their daughter found a good one. They want to believe the story. So you give them the story. I reached into my jacket pocket and took out my phone. My hands were steady. I don't know why I remember that so clearly, the steadiness of my hands, but I do. I opened the voice memo app, pressed record, and held the phone toward the gap where the hallway door didn't quite meet the frame. Mitchell kept talking. He talked for another 4 minutes. He talked about the prenuptial agreement Adele had mentioned. He said he'd already figured out how to get around it, or rather, how to make sure it never got signed properly before the ceremony. He talked about a woman named Janine in Calgary he'd been seeing on and off. He talked about his actual plan, which was to stay married for 3 to 5 years, accumulate shared assets, then initiate a separation. I recorded all of it. When there was a pause and I heard chairs scraping, I picked up my boxes quietly and moved back down the hallway to the storage room and stood there in the dark for a moment, listening to my own breathing. I want to tell you that I went back out there and confronted him right then and there. That's what I wanted to do. Every part of me that was a father wanted to do that. I wanted to walk into that room and put everything I'd just heard on the table and watch his face change. But I didn't. I drove home. I sat in my truck in the driveway for a long time before I went inside, and then I called my daughter. Adele came over that evening. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table she'd done homework at as a child, and I played her the recording. I watched her face. She went very still. She listened to the whole thing without saying a word. When it was finished, there were a few seconds of silence, and then she pressed her lips together and looked up at me with her mother's eyes. My wife passed 8 years ago, and sometimes Adele looks at me in a way that takes my breath away. And she said, "How long have you had this?" 3 hours, I said. She nodded slowly. "I want to cancel everything," I said. "I'll make the calls tonight. I'll deal with it. I'll handle Mitchell myself." "No," she said. I looked at her. "Dad," she said, and her voice was very quiet and very clear. "I need you to trust me. Can you trust me?" That was the hardest thing she ever asked me. The engagement celebration was the following afternoon, a Sunday gathering at the Elmwood, the same club, about 60 guests, family, friends, colleagues. Mitchell's parents had driven in from Halifax. Adele's aunt and cousins had come from Sudbury. It was supposed to be a milestone. The beginning of something. I shook Mitchell's hand when I arrived. I smiled at him. He smiled back at me with that easy, polished smile of his, and I thought, "You have no idea what is coming for you," and I held the thought very calmly, like a stone in a closed fist. Adele was radiant. Whatever she was feeling on the inside, she had put it somewhere deep and locked the door. She laughed and hugged people and stood beside Mitchell for photographs and let him put his arm around her, and I watched from across the room and thought she is stronger than I gave her credit for. The celebration was about 2 hours in when Mitchell stood up to make his remarks. This was the moment he'd been planning, I learned later. He had arranged for the club's AV system to play a slideshow while he spoke, photographs of him and Adele, the whole romantic presentation. He'd even prepared a speech. He held his champagne glass and smiled at the room and began talking about how he'd known from the moment he met her. Adele caught my eye from across the room. She gave me the smallest nod. I stood up and said, "I'm sorry to interrupt. If everyone could just give me one moment." The room went quiet. People looked at me with polite, slightly puzzled smiles. Mitchell's smile stayed in place, but something shifted behind his eyes. I took out my phone. I had already queued up the recording. I connected it to the club's Bluetooth speaker. Patrice had helped me set that up earlier, discreetly, without asking me any questions, and I pressed play. Mitchell's voice came out of those speakers, filling the whole room. "She thinks I'm crazy about her. She genuinely believes it." The room went absolutely silent. Her father owns 3 commercial properties in Barrie and has a portfolio worth, conservatively, $2.5 million. And Adele is an only child. You do the math. I watched Mitchell's face. The color left it slowly, like water draining from a sink. I've looked into it. Equalization payments. Matrimonial home. That's how it works in this province. Someone in the room made a sound, a sharp intake of breath. Mitchell's mother put her hand over her mouth. His father looked at his son with an expression I recognized because I had worn it myself. The look of a man who has just realized he does not know the person he is looking at. I stopped the recording. The room was so quiet I could hear the ventilation system in the ceiling. Adele set down her champagne glass on the nearest table. She did it very carefully, very deliberately. Then she looked at Mitchell and said in a perfectly composed voice, "The engagement is off. I'd like you to leave now, please." Mitchell started to speak. He said her name. He started to say something about context, about how it wasn't what it sounded like, about how people say things they don't mean when they're with their friends. "Mitchell," Adele said, and something in her voice stopped him. I said, "Please." I'm still saying please, but I won't be saying it again. His best man, a man called Derek who'd been sitting 2 seats away, stood up and touched Mitchell on the arm. Quietly, Derek steered him toward the exit. I will give Derek this. He had the grace to look ashamed on his friend's behalf. After they left, the room was very still for a moment. Then Adele's aunt stood up from her chair and started clapping. It was the kind of slow, deliberate applause that means something entirely different from celebration. One by one, people joined in. Mitchell's parents did not, and I cannot blame them. His mother was crying quietly. I felt for her, honestly. None of this was her doing. I went to Adele and put my arm around her. She leaned into me for a moment, just a moment, and then straightened up again, because that is who my daughter is. "Are you all right?" I asked her. "I will be," she said. She paused. "Dad, yeah. Thank you for not doing it last night. For waiting." I'd wanted to ask her about that in the days since. Why she'd insisted on doing it here, in front of everyone, instead of simply ending the engagement privately and quietly. "I needed people to know," she said. "Not for drama, because he would have spun it. He would have told his version. He would have told people I broke his heart for no reason, that I was difficult, that I was the problem. I know how he operates." She looked at me steadily. I needed the room. She was right. I had not thought of it that way, but she was right. The weeks that followed were not easy. There were calls to make and deposits to lose and plans to unwind. Adele had to see a lawyer to make sure there were no financial entanglements from the 2 years they'd been together. She'd been careful. As it turned out, more careful than I'd known. She had kept her accounts separate, had never added him to anything, had quietly consulted a financial advisor 6 months earlier when she'd had a feeling she couldn't name. She told me that over coffee one evening, and I looked at her and said, "You already knew something was wrong, didn't you?" She wrapped her hands around her mug and was quiet for a moment. "I didn't know," she said. "I hoped I was wrong. I wanted to be wrong." She looked out the window at the backyard, at the bare October trees. But I had started listening differently, paying attention to the small things, the way he talked about money, the way he talked about your properties when he thought I wasn't listening closely, the way he never quite answered certain questions. "Why didn't you say anything to me?" "Because I wanted proof," she said. "And I didn't have it. I only had a feeling." She looked at me. "And you would have gone straight to him, Dad. You know you would have." She was not wrong about that either. I think about that recording sometimes, about standing in that hallway with 2 boxes in my arms and my phone pointed at a gap in a door. I think about the fact that I had gone there to drop off centerpieces for my daughter's celebration, and I had walked out with something that changed everything. I don't believe in luck, exactly, but I believe in paying attention. I believe that the truth has a way of surfacing when you are in the right place with the right kind of stillness in you. Mitchell sent a message to Adele 3 weeks later, a long one, through a mutual friend. I don't know everything it said. Adele showed me one line from it, the line that mattered. I underestimated you. She screenshot that line, sent it to me, and added 3 words underneath. He sure did. She's doing well, my daughter. She took a trip to Prince Edward Island in the spring. She'd always wanted to go, and she sent me photographs of the red cliffs and the water. She looked lighter in those photographs. Lighter than she had looked in a long time. I kept the recording on my phone for a while. Then one evening I deleted it. I didn't need it anymore. We both had everything we needed. I'm 63 years old, and I've made my share of mistakes. I've been naive when I should have been sharp, and I've been hard when I should have been patient. But when it mattered most, I was standing in the right hallway at the right time, and I did not walk away from what I heard. If you're a parent listening to this, or a daughter, or anyone who has ever had a feeling about someone they couldn't quite name, listen to it. The feeling knows something your words haven't caught up to yet. Don't let anyone, no matter how charming, no matter how convincing, talk you out of what you already sense is true. My wife used to say that love is not something that happens to you. It's something you choose, again and again, with open eyes. I hope Adele finds someone who chooses her that way. I think she will. She's her mother's daughter.